I truly believe that every single person to this point has played a role in my life in one way or another. So instead of looking at the past and kind of focusing all of my time and attention onto the question of why me, why was there was one thing that I could wish for, it's more people like that.
Mm.
More people like that in our lives who believe in us, who take chances on us, who support us no matter what, who reaffirm us that whatever happens in life, they're always a call away, conversation away, a visit away. And the reason why I mention that is because I don't believe everyone offers that.
Good morning and welcome, Oleg. I'm so excited to sit here and chat with you. I would love for our audience to get to know you a little bit. You
Mhm.
and I had the chance to actually speak before, but for the audience to know who you are, would you give me a little bit about your background so they know you?
It's a good question. I think for me, that it's a good question because it's a loaded question. And I think it's this whole concept of a story and who we are, what makes us the people that we are presenting to be, that we're meant to be. So the way that I like to address it is that I am one of many things. Professionally speaking, I'm someone who is a speaker. I speak at quite a few different colleges, high schools all over the states on the importance of mindset and reframing and identifying stories or self-limiting narratives that are not necessarily benefiting us, so to speak. Uh, and then the other reason why you and I connected is that I have another organization called Moments Worth Remembering, where we create custom-made appreciation and memory books for different occasions in people's lives, birthdays, celebration of life, anniversaries, graduations, you name it. And then personally speaking, I would say I am, as you can tell by the name, I am or once a resident of Russia. I was born there and lived there for my first 12 years of my life. Had a little bit of everything that you could think of within that. I've had the hardships, the ups and downs, and then was fortunate enough to be adopted by a family from Ann Arbor, Michigan, when I was 12 years old. So that was a whole other transition and coming to the States, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture. But I think always having the drive and the desire to figure it out, to work through whatever challenges and problems that were in front of me. And I think to some degree, that particular approach and mindset has become so ingrained within me where pretty much most things that I engage with, whether it's business or pleasure, that is something that is at the core of it. It's the natural curiosity about how things are, how things could be, and the natural curiosity about people, and just really all things in general, because I think there's a lot to learn from. I think there's a lot to teach. I think there's a lot to share. And so that concept of you being a student and a teacher simultaneously to anyone you meet, I think it's available to each and every single one of us. So that I hope partially answers some of the
It
question that you answered.
it does, and I love that you said it's a loaded question because it really
Mm-hmm.
is. Uh,
Yeah.
from knowing a little bit about you and your background, the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you created moments worth remembering, was that a part of you attempting to capture a little bit of your own life also and the things that you've grown through? Because it definitely is very interesting, we'll say it that
Mm-hmm.
way, to be born in one country and then transition completely to another country and adapt to it. So, was that a part of your reasoning why Moments Worth Remembering came about?
Uh, absolutely. I think that for me, when I think about the origin story of this particular movement or organization, whichever way you want to term it, is that I have had a lot of experiences through my own life where I realized relatively quickly how short life can be for some of us. And the other realization that I had is that many of us go through life unrecognized, unseen, and ultimately not loved, even though we might be, but we just haven't had the opportunities nor created opportunities for other people to express that love for other people from others. And what I started to realize, so there are a couple of different events that I think led me to this particular point. The first event was being a part of multiple funerals by now, where I was able to sit down and listen to the different stories that were shared about the individual who had passed, and realize that, or maybe it was a question that I was asking myself of, I wonder how many of these stories this person actually knew when they were alive. So that was the first realization. And the second realization was, there was a period of time when I used to facilitate this call. It was all done through Zoom, primarily started during COVID, around COVID-ish time. And it was really an opportunity for people from all over the world to come together every given Saturday for an hour and to connect around the topic that I felt was most relevant to our lives. So I would pick a topic at hand. Let's say we're talking about the importance of being seen or recognized or loved, or what is the meaning of life. And really what it was outside of that was to create an opportunity for people to exercise their voice, to understand that they matter, and to know that they're seen and loved no matter what, at least for that hour that we're able to spend together. And that was another, I think, confirmation for me that there's so many people throughout life, myself included, who are seeking for opportunities like that. I know there's a quote that you and I connected around, and I found it after a conversation and I sent it to you. And the quote is that, I hope I can remember it now. Babies cry for it, men die for it. And then there's a question, what is it? And the answer is recognition, the desire to be seen. I don't know if it applies to all of us. I think it applies to a large majority of us. I think it's a fair statement to assume. I think that with, in my opinion, anything that we do, it's a reflection of that, right? So much of the work that I'm involved in, much of the work that I create, even the whole mission behind Moments Worth Remembering, I wholeheartedly believe it's about that. Now, will everyone receive your work the way that you receive it and present it to other people? That's not always true, right? People receive it in different ways. I think that with something that is personal as this, in hearing all these different things from different people in your life, it could be shocking, it could be overwhelming, it could simultaneously create the opposite. Opportunities for you to hear things that you might have known, but just assumed that the person felt X, Y, and Z way. And so that's really been, I think, the mission for it. And ironically enough, the clip that I saw of you with Mr. Gamlin, he's one of the people I created it for. It's been probably over a year ago. I reached out to his wife on Facebook, and I had mentioned to her the impact Steve has had in my life, and I wanted to create this thing and see if she can help me kind of spread the message and coordinate it with some of his family members, and we're able to put it together. And I know you know him, and I've known him for a number of years. He's someone that is open to things like that. So that's another thing that I realized as part of this journey is not everyone is as open to receiving recognition and appreciation. But I think when you are, it can completely transform the way you live and view life in general.
That's an incredible observation on your part, that not every person is going to perceive things or receive things the same way. And that is vital for us as we continue to spread our missions. Let's just say it that way, that everybody is going at their own pace. For you, Oleg, I transitioned from Lebanon to the States because of a war. You transitioned because of family challenges. What is it like for you to be a part of two countries, really?
That is a great question. I don't think I've been asked that question in that way. So there was a period of my life when I refused to acknowledge one. And the reason why is because of the hardships that I had faced in that particular country. And the other part was I was ashamed of it. I was ashamed of that aspect of my identity, that I was Russian, that I had experienced all these different things when I was there. What I've come to realize was within my own journey, in order to be able to experience peace, I had to accept all aspects of it. I couldn't just accept X, Y, and Z and then leave the other things there unsaid, unspoken of. So I realized that whenever I think about kind of my origin and where I am now, and even though they are two drastically different places and different cultures and really just different in every possible way that you could think of, they are the things that make up who I am. So in many regards, I'm extremely grateful that I was born where I was, that I was born into the circumstances that I was, as challenging as they were, because what they've given me is an opportunity to become who I am, to learn the things that I did, to understand that not only can life end at any given moment, but also when I experience hardships and challenges in today's life, so to speak, I have a completely different perspective and a level of appreciation for it because I know what my life was like years prior. So that's what I'm realizing from the two journeys, is that the first half of my life has given me a great level of appreciation for the second half. It's given me a chance to understand my family on a completely different level. Now, I don't know if you have had experiences like this or similar, or if you know of anyone who has, but there's something unique about being adopted at a later age in life. And what I mean by that is, at least in my case, when I was adopted at 12, I already had a pretty well-established view of the world that was around me. I knew who my parents were. I knew what my situation was. I knew what the possible risk might be moving to a completely different country and learning all the different things that I had to in that setting. So when I came here and I was able to learn a lot of these different things in this particular country, I realized that having had the experience that I did prior gave me a chance to understand family on a whole other level. And what I mean by that is, with those experiences, it gave me a chance to understand that I believe family is a choice. And that is, I get to choose the people that are quote unquote part of my family. So I have friends that I've had friendships with for 10, 15, 20 years by now, that I would consider to be some of my closest family. They've been there for me every step of the way. They've supported me. They've accepted me for who I am. And really what I mean by that is all of my imperfections, all the flaws, all the this, all the other things. And they've been there and they continue to be there. And I think it's important. I found that it's important to have people like that in my life because A, not only does it give me a sense of community, but B, it gives me a chance to interact with people who I know are truly there for me. So that's another component that I think I've developed by being in this country compared to the other one, is that real sense of friendship, community, camaraderie that maybe I wasn't able to experience as much in the first half of my life. Not to say that there aren't people who exist like that or who existed in my life. I was too young. I was too young to, I think, experience any friendship similar to what I'm able to experience now. So in some ways, not having it the first 12 years gave me a chance to not only quote unquote start over, but really build some of these more meaningful things, because I was able to start from a place of, okay, now I understand what it was like to not have a best friend. Now I understand what it was like to not have a parental figure. So now I can build from that, right? Now I can turn back to these people and I can invite them into my life and make them a part of my family, so to speak. But it's a very interesting experience, very interesting question though. How would you say from your perspective in being in the two of them, are they
That,
both a part of who you are, or do you?
oh, definitely. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's wonderful
Mhm,
to have had the experience of being born in Lebanon, being raised there for, like you, 12 years basically, and then moving
mhm,
to the States and going through a period of war, and everything that we've experienced has definitely enriched my experience of how I show up in the world and really
mhm.
understand what truly matters. That has given me a perspective that is very enriching, is what I would say, to how I speak with someone, how I proceed, how much I care about other humans. That has definitely made a gigantic um, impact in how much I value someone else and
Yeah.
really work on listening and getting to know them. So, from that perspective, I would love for you to give the audience just a little bit about what it
Mhm.
was like being in the orphanage so that they know the feeling of what's it like now and why you appreciate all the things that you do and why Moments Worth Remembering is genuinely a
Mhm.
project, not just a business.
So the best way that I could describe what that experience was like for someone who hasn't been in it is, for me, the circumstances. I'll give you some context for how I even ended up in there. So my first 8 to 9 years were pretty challenging, and what I mean by that is I felt that I didn't really have a parental figure to rely on during those years. My sister oftentimes was my quote unquote legal guardian, so to speak, and helped navigate and guide me through life. But at the same time, she also had a life of her own, and I was her only child at the time. And so I don't know what that experience was like to be in a position of being a sibling and all of a sudden have to take care of someone who is um, related to you, right? And it's one of those situations where I felt that I don't know whether or not she wanted to be in those particular shoes, but she kind of had to, right? Because if she wasn't in that situation to help me for the first 8 to 9 years, I don't even think I would be here, period. Nor have I had all the opportunities afterwards. So when I was 9 years old, I felt that with everything that I've experienced in my household, it was one of those moments where I had a feeling that enough was enough. And so I needed to change course. I didn't fully know what it was going to take to be able to do that. And one of the options that was presented to me, to this date, I still don't know how. I must have heard it at school from one of the teachers, kids, or somewhere along the way. But it was the possibility of going into an orphanage. And I remember going to city hall or kind of city council equivalent with my sister and speaking with this director slash social worker, social services, and explaining to her my situation at home and how I felt that it was a better route for me to go into the orphanage system. And eventually I ended up going into one and spent 3 years from 9 to 12 there. The first year was extremely challenging. And the reason why is it was one of those decisions that after I had made it, there was no way going back.
Mm.
It wasn't like I can go back to the director of the orphanage and say, hey, I was kidding. I don't. really enjoy here. It's one of those where you legally signed yourself over. You signed
Mm.
your guardianship over from your parents to the state, and so now you are their responsibility until you age out or until you get adopted, in my case. And the first year, on that was one of the challenges. The second challenge that I experienced within that was the whole concept of a family, so to speak. So my orphanage, it was divided into three different sectors. Each one of the sectors was its own family. I was in family number one. There was family number two, family number three. Each one of them had about 16 to 20 kids, roughly similar ratio of boy to girl in each one of them, and different age groups.
Mm.
So some of them were as old as 17 and 18. Others were as young as 2 or 3 years old.
Mm.
So very different age groups, very different circumstances for how each one of them entered the system. Similar themes, but drastically different. Some were the stories of being dropped off on the footsteps. Some were the stories of similar to mine, where I was brought in through some other legal guardian and was essentially given to them. And what I started to realize as part of that experience relatively quickly was it was truly in my best interest to not only make the most out of the time that I was there, but also be on my best behavior when I was there, because I realized that, and I think this is probably true in life, not only in the orphanage system, but when you are on your best behavior, when you are able to not necessarily become the favorite of whoever the decision makers are, but develop that connection with them, it makes your life easier in some ways, right? You get certain breaks, you get certain opportunities that other people might not. And that's what I started to realize within that was, okay, we're all stuck in this one room, one building, so to speak, right? How do I make the most out of this opportunity? So that's where I think the aspect of curiosity for me was not ultimately born, but it was just amplified. And I started to get curious about, okay, what other opportunities are available to me in this particular system that can potentially help me excel in life? And one of those opportunities was to join a folk singing program. So I ended up doing this my second year when I was there. And it was essentially, the requirement was that every single person who had lived in there either had to be involved within a form of music, sports, or some sort of activity. And so I was naturally drawn towards music and dancing and singing. And then probably within a matter of months, I think the teacher that I was paired up with, she saw the potential in me, and they started to put together kind of individual songs and performances, and we started to travel to different places. And that's where I think I started to realize that there's something here. I didn't know the ultimate journey of it. I didn't know that this was the program that I was going to essentially bring me to the United States, but I felt that there was something different. I felt that there was some sort of chance or opportunity within this, solely because the experiences that I was going through with this were drastically different than the experiences that other kids who weren't doing this going through. And then fast forward to when I was 11, I was fortunate enough to kind of make contact with my adopted family and be brought to the States a year to a year and a half later. But that's what I think of it even today, thinking about your question, what was that experience like? It was challenging. It was a place of opportunity. And I would say that after coming to the States and being upset about the circumstances that I went through, I started to realize that as challenging as that place was, at the same time, that place was a huge blessing because it gave me a chance to engage with things that I otherwise would not have. It gave me a chance to develop skills that I would not have. And many of these are life skills. I shared with you yesterday the ability to sew your clothes. Now, if you have a hole in your socks, it's not like I have the means to go into the store and go buy a new pair of socks. So what do? Figure out how to sew that hole. That's a huge life skill that I think many people don't necessarily have because they haven't had the circumstances presented to them where such skills had to be acquired. Ability to grow and cook your own food, to take care of your surroundings. There's a great speech, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's from one of the, I don't know if he's a lieutenant or he's some sort of high-ranking officer. And he delivered this speech, I think it was in the form of, not a TED Talk, but like a motivational speech. And part of it starts with starting your day with making your bed. How important that is. And so that's another skill that we learned when I was there. No matter what, you always start off your day with making your bed, cleaning your room, preparing everything the day in advance. And I look back at all those things now and think about how important it is to be able to go to bed and write out all the different things that you're wanting to do or experience the following day, the day before. How much of a difference that is, right? Versus waking up that following morning, writing that list down, and then realizing that it just becomes a never-ending list. Because you just keep writing all the different things versus if you do it the night before, you kind of wake up with a completely different mindset and approach to your day. So that was another skill that was taught to us, was you prepare for everything the day before. School, whatever it was. So long story longer, it's a huge opportunity for me to develop. Now, were certain things taught in a way that I wish they did or they were? Probably not. Love, I think there was probably a lack of. And that's not necessarily even to blame anyone. I mean, if you think about it, per family, we had one individual caregiver. So is it really fair to assume of one caregiver to equally love all 16 to 20 kids of drastically different backgrounds, experiences, age groups, ethnicity? I don't think it is. So that is a component that I don't know how you change that or how you introduce more of it, but I know that was one of the things that in some areas that it sometimes were absent.
How long did it take you once you were in the States to begin to unravel some of these learnings that you are so wise about now? And I'm asking this specifically, Oleg, for someone who is going through a very challenging time to understand that they're very capable, they can make a change in their life, and also it's not magic. So how long did it take you to become aware of all these things that you've grown through and what impact they've had?
Probably 5 to 8 years, maybe 10 years. And I think the reason why it took that many years was, so the first half of coming to the States really revolved around me gaining enough proficiency of my language, understanding the culture, understanding the family dynamic, the dynamic at school, how to make friends. And the blessing and the curse of all of that is it's not like life stops for you to have you work on one component. And once you have mastered that, then you're able to go to the next one, and then the one after that, the one after that. It's all thrown at you at the same time. So every single day included an aspect from each and every single one of those elements. Once I was able to get an understanding of that, that's when I started to reflect upon my experience and really try and learn. And I'll say that there have been a handful of people throughout my own life, especially at those stages, that encouraged me to do a couple things that I think may or may not be of value to anyone who's listening to this. And that's first, accept the things that have happened. Not accept them as they were, so to speak, but accept them in a way that you choose to accept them. And then the second part is forgiveness. That was a huge part. So when I first heard of these two topics, I thought they were just a bunch of BS. Like, no way. How can I forgive this person for doing what they did? Because here is where I ended up. One of the people that I felt that I had to forgive in order to move forward was my birth mom. Forgive her for the circumstances that I was born into. Forgive her for the quote unquote lack of care that she provided to me, lack of presence that she gave to me, and ultimately the situation that I was put in, especially with the orphanage. And I realized that me carrying that weight, me carrying that blame for her, all it was doing was taking away peace from me, period. It wasn't impacting her in any way. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I had no way of knowing that. All it was doing was it was impacting me every single morning that I woke up. And I realized that by forgiving her for who she was and what she did was really one of the first steps that I could take in finding that inner peace. Now, I did that through letters. I wrote letters to her, but really it was letters to me, forgiving myself for how I felt about who she was and what she did. I did that for probably a number of years. And I'll say that in doing that exercise over and over again, at a certain point, something changed. At a certain point, it's hard to even describe what it is, but I have a feeling that you might have felt things like that in your own life, but there's just something inside that changed, that clicked, something that clicked in a way that it hasn't, and it gave me a chance to think about my previous life through a completely different set of circumstances or a completely different lens. So instead of looking at the past and kind of focusing all of my time and attention onto the question of why me? Why was I the one that was meant to experience all this hardship, all this loss, neglect, this, that, and the other? I started to look at all those things through a lens of what have I learned from these things? Yes, X, Y, and Z happened, but what did it teach me? What did each one of the people give me as far as tools go, questions to ask, things to be aware of? And then from there, I just started to repeat that exercise with every single person that I felt did me wrong when I was younger. I transitioned from my mom to her boyfriend, done it for other relatives, friends, caregivers, and then just kept doing it ever since. And I think it's been probably one of the more rewarding exercises that I've done, is really just sitting down with a piece of paper and a pen and just reflecting upon that.
Very
And
powerful.
I think part of that reflection also, what I realized is there's a difference between diminishing a set of circumstances versus acknowledging them for what they were, but also taking a proactive approach in learning things from that set of circumstances. I think every event presents that opportunity. And especially the more difficult ones present a really massive opportunity to learn things that you otherwise might not. Difficult conversations, It could be certain people, just all types of situations. I think there's always something there to learn for you, no matter how hard it might be.
Oleg, thank you for describing that process
Of course.
so thoroughly and authentically, because it is a process to forgive and become more of who you are so that you have internal peace. And that is a gigantic part for a lot of individuals that are going through something that they view as difficult and then becoming so much more in depth of who they are because of that process. So thank you for describing that. And because you have the opportunity to actually have a new family, what is the relationship like with your mom now, your adopted mom?
It's amazing. It's amazing, and what I mean by that is, so first of all, her and I can have a conversation about anything on the face of the earth. And she's one of those individuals where I can sit down and speak with her for hours and hours and hours, and we can talk about, I don't know, a fly on the wall or whatever it is that we're going through in our own lives. And what I've come to realize about her, as well as my other family members, is that two things. A, I truly believe that every single person to this point has played a role in my life in one way or another. So I don't really think it's fair of me to say, well, this family was better than the family before that. I think each family had their own role for the time of my life that I was in. I will say, though, however, that the family that I have now, they've given me opportunities to experience life through a very different perspective. When I think of people like my mom, I think that she's one of the more giving, caring, loving people that I know in my own life. She's able to provide support in a way that I don't walk away feeling like I did anything wrong. Now, it's not to say that we haven't had conversations where I've probably given her gray hair, younger than she should have had them. But that's, I think, just part of me growing up as a kid and just naturally, I don't know, getting into trouble and doing all these things that boys do. But I realized that looking back at that relationship, it's one that I cherish and value deeply because of who she is, the support she's able to provide. And the same is true of my dad. So the unique story about my dad is that when I was living in Russia, I was able to have the perspective of what it was like to have a mom because I had one. Now, I didn't have a dad. There are mixed stories about what had happened, but essentially the story is that I didn't have one from the time that I was born. So I didn't really have that male figure in my life that I referred to as a dad until I was able to have the dad that I do today. And what he has given me is, or are, completely different things than my mom is able to provide to me, right? There's still overlap between what the two are able to do as far as support, emotional, physical, spiritual. But at the same time, he has given me an opportunity to understand what it's like to be a father from someone that I can actually call dad, right? So not having someone the first 12 years and then having somebody for the 19 after has given me a completely different perspective on what fatherhood can look like for when I potentially become a dad in my own life, right? So that's where I think I was very fortunate to have the family that I have. I will also say this because I've worked with different people, different families who have gone through adoption, domestic, international. Not everyone has what I have, and the same is true of me. I think that there's certain families that are just not able to connect the same exact way for one reason or another. And I'm not going to say that I have found this perfect equation and let me just share it with you and the things in your life will be better and drastically different. I will just say from my perspective, I understand that it's a privilege. I understand that I'm very privileged to have the family that I do. Not to say that we don't go through our own challenges. We do, absolutely. But I'm very privileged to have the support that I do, to have the connection that I'm able to experience with them. And part of that, I think, goes to who they are as people, what their values are, what they believe in, what they stand for in this world. And in some way or another, if there was one thing that I could wish for, it's more people like that. More people like that in our lives, who believe in us, who take chances on us, who support us no matter what, who reaffirm us that whatever happens in life, they're always a call away, conversation away, a visit away. And the reason why I mention that is because I don't believe everyone offers that.
That is a very true statement. That the way I look at it is everybody's growth and understanding of being a human being is at different levels, but you have gained a perspective on building relationships and enhancing relationships that a lot of individuals have not had the chance to explore and understand. What do you think for your own self? What is it that you still work on to become even a better version of you as you work with so many building their own moments?
It's a good question. I think there are a couple of different areas that I'm working on. The first is communication. I think that it's one of those things where the more people you expose yourself to, the more opportunities you get to see how you show up to different people in different circumstances. And I'll give you a perfect example. One of those areas is I love playing basketball. And so whenever I get a chance, I'm able to do it. And living in Philadelphia, there's one of the groups that I'm able to do it, just a group of local guys here that we play. And I realized that even in playing that game, there are a couple of things that happen. So first is something that is just naturally part of who I am, and that's I have a very competitive spirit. So not to say that I go into every game with the intention to win, I do, but the primary driver above that one is being able to give 100% in every given moment. And so because I feel that I'm able to do that, I simultaneously create an expectation for other people to do the same. So if I feel that a person is not given 100% based on my experience of them and who I've seen them as when they do, I will communicate those things to them. So what I realize is that it's not always the happiest form of communication. And part of that also has to do with the communication that I've received from some of the coaches in my own life. So not everyone pulled me to the side and say, hey, let's sit down, let's have a peaceful dialogue. Some people use words that I don't choose to repeat to other people for the sake of the listeners or anyone else. But I realized that communication, it's such an interesting element because A, it's something that's available to every single one of us. B, we're doing it every single moment. And C, the better I can become at it, I think the more opportunities it creates for me and other people. So that's an area that I'm working on probably every single day, is learning how to communicate. I know I even mentioned this to you last time you and I connected. Part of that communication, part of my job, what it requires me to do is to reach out to different schools, different people within the different schools. Now, I can control the things that I send from my end. I can control the intention that I put out there in the messaging that I send out. What I can't control are the messages I'm going to receive. I can control how I respond, but I can't control the messages I'm going to receive back. Okay. And so you could imagine that in my case, having sent, I think it's probably close to 290, 300,000 emails over a course of like 10 years, 12 years, I have received pretty much everything you could imagine on the face of the earth. Okay. I've received extremely positive messages, and I've received the complete opposite spectrum of that. Now, that is another opportunity, how I look at it, for me to engage and for me to enhance that form of communication, right? What do I choose to say back to an individual who responds in a negative manner to my message? Even though the desire sometimes might feel like just completely letting it all out, how I feel, but then at the same time having enough awareness to catch myself and ask myself the question of, how does that help you and how does that help them? Is there a better question that I can ask? Okay. If they respond to you in a certain way, is it truly about what you have said? Or could it be because of what they are going through? So is there a better question that you can ask of that individual that might allow them to express what they're going through in their own life that can simultaneously help create peace in their life? So that, I think, is an elevated level of awareness. I know you have it. I know many other people that do, that we're able to catch ourselves in. But at the same time, it's a daily practice, because the opportunity to act differently, to act the other way, it's always there, right? Just like the opportunity to not be kind to someone, especially when they are doing something to you that may not be perceived as kind. Choice is always there. The choice is always there to act the same exact way, to match the same level of energy. But the other choice is always also there, to cycle, to go against the grain, to match it with a completely different tone of energy. And that's where I think we are, in my opinion, probably more powerful than we even know we are. And that's just purely through whatever's happening inside and what we're choosing to do with it. That's fascinating. How much power we actually have to not only create and influence our own world, but also the worlds of other people. Just through spoken word. Think about how many people in your own life, I know you said you've done this 5 years, over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how many people in your own life that you've been able to touch over the course of the 5 or more years through your spoken word, through someone else's spoken word that you've had on the show, through a combination that A, you may never hear from, B, people that you do hear from, and that's just all from a conversation. And it's not even necessarily a conversation with them, maybe a conversation for them or with them in spirit, but that is powerful. They may never meet you. They may never truly know who you are or what you're going through or what you've been through. But the fact that you were able to have that one conversation with whoever it is, and then they're able to listen to it and connect to their own life, change the way they think, change the way they do, change the way they act, change who they are. That is powerful.
Extremely powerful. And for people to get that point is so crucial for them to begin to grow into the best versions of themselves, because that's what the world gets to see, is whatever versions of ourselves we're presenting to them. So thank you for that really beautiful, enriching way of looking at all of it.
Mhm.
Like, I know we're running close to time. Tell us the best way for people to connect with you. And I have one or two questions depending on our time
Yeah.
frame. But what's the best way for people to connect with you?
I think the best way, personally speaking, is through LinkedIn or Facebook. That's where I spend most of my time. And you can find me personally just typing in my first and last name. You could find me through any of the organizations, such as Moments Worth Remembering. And then would love to connect with anyone, regardless of whatever that thing might be. Let's say you're connecting with us through Moments Worth Remembering, and you don't necessarily have to create a book for anyone, but want to learn something, want to pick each other's brain, or going through whatever you're going through. I think that we're all a resource to one another. It's just a matter of making ourselves available as a resource for each other. And so that is my invitation, so to speak, that I'm making myself available to anyone that chooses to connect.
Thank you for doing that. I
Of course.
have a second level question to what I asked.
Yeah.
How do you yourself work on when the negative comes to you in an email or a conversation or whichever? How do you work on not letting that seep in to you?
So I've done it in a couple of different ways. First is I have learned that what works for me is setting reminders. And what I mean by that is not only mental reminders, but also something physical, something that I can look at and help me gain awareness of the situation. I used to have a bracelet. Speaking of, I need to reorder it from a friend of mine, but he had given me this bracelet. I probably wore it for going on to 3 years by now. And it was very simple. On one side of the bracelet, it just said, it's all just information. It's all information. And the reason why I felt that that was a really beautiful reminder, and that I was able to wear it and remind myself of it every single day, every single moment, is because it's that. It's nothing more, right? It's all information. You get to choose whether it's good, bad, or anything in between, and you get to choose how you act upon that information. So physical reminders like that. Second thing that I practice probably every single day to this point, reflection. I just pull out a sheet of paper and I start every single morning just reflecting. It could be a question. It could be an insight. It could be some sort of realization that I had from a day before, from walking the dog the morning of and interacting with the world around me. I found that taking 10 to 15 to 30 minutes every single day has been a really powerful tool, because it gives me a chance to not only release some of these things, right? It could be negative energy stored from some of these negative experiences, and releasing it in a controlled way. This is a very controlled environment, okay? This is a 1 to 2 to however many sheets of paper, and that's it. It doesn't go anywhere else. It stays in here within a certain parameter, and I'm able to control that. So what I try and do is I try to release everything that I'm kind of processing. Whenever I do get a negative response, it's typically the physical reminder. It's a bracelet or some form of it. Could be a sticky note. And then it's a mental reminder at the same time that, okay, they responded in this way. It's most likely not against you. So the reminder that I have for myself is that don't take it personally, or it's not personal. And most of the times it's not. Most of the time it's not. In my case, it's due to not being the right time, the right information, the right programming that they're looking for, the right situation in the person's life that might be going through something in their own life. And most often we are. You're going through something in your own life right now. I'm going through things in my own life. Anyone who's listening, anyone that we're going to interact with today, tomorrow, weeks after, they're going to be going through things in their own life that are probably different than yours, maybe with some similarities as far as general themes go, but the individual events are drastically different. So that's what I just remind myself of every single time, is that it's not personal. Don't take it personally. It's probably something that they're going through in their own life, or it's any of the other options.
I'm curious, what else did that bracelet say besides it's all information?
The first part was it's all information. The second part was be present.
That's a good bracelet. That's a very good
Yeah.
bracelet. How do you believe that you're present? Do you see yourself as being present?
Yes. I think I'm more present now than I have been before. And I really mean that, being present in all aspects of my life, the highs, the lows, that everything in between. Prior, I would say I was more present for the highs. I was less present for the lows because I was trying to escape the lows, the challenges, the obstacles, right? I was trying to find a way to quickly move beyond them and to not do what I'm doing now, and that's to actually take the time, slow down, and ask myself the question of, what am I here to learn? What is this here to teach me? I think it's a really powerful opportunity to learn from those circumstances. I've also found that in my own life, the harder moments oftentimes can teach you more things about life than the opposite. When everything's going well, when things are just naturally flowing, I found that there just aren't, I don't experience that many just natural opportunities to take a step back, to reflect, because everything's fine. Everything's working. So then it's just almost like, why take the time, right? Versus if it's the other way around, it kind of gives you no other option but to take the time to figure things out. Well, how did you get here? What led to X, Y, and Z set of circumstances? Oftentimes it's not any singular event. It's a multitude of events that have happened over the course of life. Thousands of decisions that I might have made that just continue to repeat and repeat and repeat themselves over again until I confront the root of the problem, so to speak. Then I'm able to break the cycle of what it's going through. But yeah, I would say now more present than I was before. And really with all things, people, other living beings, myself, versus before that, I think it was more so just a race. Get through the hard stuff, onto the good things, and then just stay there.
That's a drop the mic moment, honestly. For real. Because so many people are attempting to rush through the bad things, like, wait a minute. Yeah. You got something to learn here. There's something that you're experiencing that you're never going to get if you don't go through this experience. And it is all an experience of what
and some
enriches
experiences are so unique too. I mean, think about, I have a couple friends that are going through a divorce. Okay. So over the course of a lifetime, how many times are you going to go through a divorce? I would guess like less than 10. Okay. That's pretty wild to think about. Let's say over the course of 90 years or 100 years that you're on this planet, that you're going to go through that particular experience. For most people, it's probably one or two. Only 1 to 2 times over a course of 90 to 100 years are you going to experience that. Now, for many of the people that I speak with, it's not the most pleasant of experiences, right? Because you expected one life and you are living a different life. But at the same time, what I've encouraged a lot of the people that are going through it was take it for what it is. Spend the time to reflect. Who am I during this particular time? What am I learning? What would I like to learn? And I think the same exact thing applies to relationships. And I've been in a number of different relationships where I'm able to step away from and look at myself through the person that I was in and acknowledge the things that I contributed towards the positive aspects of it and towards the negative aspects of it. And really just take ownership of both of those things. So that's where I think there is a really beautiful opportunity within those things, where some of these experiences are truly so unique that you may not get a chance to experience something like that again. Bankruptcies. How many people file that over a course of a lifetime? I only know a handful of people who have done it once. So yeah, was it challenging to go through it? Probably. Was it challenging not to know where your next paycheck is going to come from? Probably. But at the same time, what has that time given you that you otherwise might not have had if you didn't experience that? That's where I think that opportunity always lies. Just asking questions like that, learning, and just knowing that, hey, I've experienced this. It does not mean that I won't experience this again. I don't think we have that level of control over life. But I think what it does mean is that here's an opportunity to learn something that I might not have known before.
Such incredible perspective. I hope people are taking notes from listening to this.
I should be taking notes for myself.
I know we're at time. Is there anything that you would like to share that I didn't ask you, so that we don't get off this particular podcast and go, Rima didn't ask this?
You know, I will say that there aren't any particular topics or questions. I think what you've asked, you were meant to ask, and it was meant to be asked. I think the one thing that I will say about who you are, a couple things. So first, I love the poster in your background. Okay. I think there is a lot to be said about the positivity that we can carry in this world. There was a talk by a friend of mine that I came across this morning. It was a commencement speech for a social work group at one of the universities. And in it, he had asked a very profound question. He said, essentially the question is, how do I show up around those who are surrounding me? So I think that's a really powerful question connected to who you are as a person in your poster, is that all of us have the option to show up one way or another. And are we aware of it most times? Most of us, I don't know, maybe not. But choosing one perspective over the other, in this case, choosing positivity, I found that it has led to so many different opportunities that otherwise wouldn't exist. It's just as simple as that. Choosing to be positive in the midst of the negative. Choosing to see glass half full and not half empty. Choosing to see every conversation as an opportunity to learn something different, new. Maybe something you've already known, but not in that way. And I think that's something that you've provided me over the course of this time. I know it's something that you've provided many other people, even when I was listening to parts of your conversation with Steve, is that you have that ability. You have the ability to naturally bring out the best out of people. Now, I don't know if it's just who you are. Maybe it's just you naturally do that for yourself, and so you're able to do that for others. But I just want to thank you for that, because not every experience offers that.
Thank you. And you're welcome. And it's a work in progress, even for me. A human being in progress all the
There you
time,
go.
working on things. I appreciate you so much. And I know we'll connect in a different podcast. And for our incredible viewers and listeners, please remember our attitude always determines our altitude in life. And we'll see you in the next podcast. Thank you, Oleg.